I think they could be back as early as next year. Now, this year, I've got them in a little bit of a rebuilding year for a couple of reasons. I like the overall talent. In fact, if you lined them up player for player and, gave them the eyeball test, who's got the best athletic talent in the SEC East, I'm going to go with Florida this year. But it's inexperienced talent. They only have 10 returning starters. They lose 23 lettermen. They have a first-year head coach on top of that, Will Muschamp. He's got to learn the new players' strengths and weaknesses. The players have to learn new schemes on both sides of the ball. They make a drastic change on offense, going from the spread offense to a pro-style attack. I've seen this happen a couple of times recently, Minnesota, San Diego State, and these teams struggled. They had quarterbacks that were among the tops in their conference. All of a sudden, taking snaps from center, their production dropped. Now, the advantage they have is Brantley's more of a pro-style quarterback, so this system fits him better. But inexperienced team and a brutal schedule. They draw Alabama and LSU out of the West. They have to play South Carolina on the road. They have to play Georgia at a neutral site. So they only have 3 SEC home games in this year. Next year, they'll have 4 SEC home games, only 3 road games because of that neutral site game against Georgia. They'll be in the second year of the new systems. We've seen a lot of second-year head coaches have success. Gene Chizik won a national title. Jim Tressel, Urban Meyer, Bob Stoops, all won national titles in their second year. It's not going to be this year, but next year I think Florida's back up there and possibly one of the top 10 teams in the country in the preseason and a legitimate national title contender.
Okay, Phil, if you had to take one of these 3 teams to make the SEC championship game, one of these 3 unlikely teams, which would you take to do it in the next 5 years? Mississippi State, Tennessee, or Kentucky?
I'm going to probably go with Tennessee. Tennessee is a team that they've went through 3 head coaches in 3 years. They were short on scholarships last year. They had no returning starters on their offensive line. They had a true freshman quarterback. They still made it to a bowl. They've got the pedigree in the SEC. They've got the recruiting capability. I do think Derek Dooley's a quality coach and will get the job done. They're going to be, next year there'll be a 3rd year of Derek Dooley, and all of a sudden the scholarship limits will come up. Their recruiting is going to improve, and I think Tennessee's got the best chance. But one team I wouldn't put it past is Mississippi State. That Dan Mullen, heck of a head coach. He knows what he's doing. He's getting the most out of the product on hand, but I think Tennessee's got the better shot.
Can anybody beat Andrew Luck for the Heisman this year?
Yeah, I think that I would take numerous players over Andrew Luck this year for the following reason. Wow. I think Andrew Luck is going to be the first player taken in next year's draft. Andrew Luck would have been the first player taken in this year's draft. Andrew Luck's the most talented quarterback in the country. But the Heisman's not saying who's the most talented quarterback in the country. It's saying who's going to be the most productive player. And most times it's from the team that's a national title contender. I think Stanford drops a couple of games. And anytime they lose a game, the Heisman voters just say, look, Andrew Luck lost that game. This guy hasn't lost a game. This guy hasn't lost a game. If you look at your Heisman Trophy winners, generally it comes from a player. Last year, Cam Newton of Auburn, undefeated team. Mark Ingram of Alabama, undefeated team. A couple years ago, Troy Smith of Ohio State, I think he was about 30th in the NCAA in pass efficiency, but he was a quarterback for an undefeated team. So with the fact I don't think Stanford will be undefeated this year, I'd put him a little lower in the equation. The second part is the production level. Landry Jones is going to throw for over 5,000 yards at Oklahoma this year. Andrew Luck will not, and for the following reasons. Stanford likes to establish the run. They're never going to throw the football over the field. I think Andrew Luck's limit's probably around the 3,000 level in passing yards. He also loses 3 veteran offensive linemen in front of him and his top 2 receivers from last year. So I think when you look at the surrounding talent, the fact Stanford doesn't throw the ball 50 times a game, he's going to probably trail Landry Jones by a couple thousand yards in passing, plus a couple other quarterbacks. Kellen Moore could be playing for an undefeated team. He led the NCAA in passing last year, and he, like Landry Jones, will probably outpass Luck by about 1,500 yards. Case Keenum of Houston, they could be undefeated this year. He's going to become the NCAA leader in career passing. He might throw for 5,000 yards this year. All those guys, I think, are better Heisman candidates. If you're asking me to pick somebody for the NFL draft for my team next year, I'm taking Andrew Luck. But I think as far as Heisman candidates go, I would not put him as the front runner.
Phil, final question here. You have one ticket. You can go to one game, any game you want to go to in the regular season in college football this year. Where are you headed?
I'm going to go with LSU against Oregon right out of the box. First of all, it's in Cowboy Stadium, which I think would be a treat to go see a football game in. And the second, you've got two teams that are going to be ranked in the top 4 in the country at the start of the year. It's the offensive Oregon against LSU's outstanding defense. I think that's going to be a great football game, and it's in the first week of the season.
That can't argue with that choice. I mean, you could throw in Oklahoma at Florida State, certainly. I think that LSU at Alabama is going to be a classic. Arkansas at Alabama as well. Those or LSU taking on Arkansas. Any of those games, like you mentioned, those are some of the favorites in the national championship race. But, Phil, thanks so much for being with us, and we definitely want to have you on again. And your book is a must-get for everybody out there. And tell them about your website.
Well, I appreciate that, Luke. And the website is Phil Steele. That's STEELE.com. And, I'm limited to 328 pages in the magazine. If you've ever picked up a copy, I fill each and every square inch of that magazine with information and lots of it. But the website, they tell me, philsteele.com, STEELE, is unlimited amount of pages, and I'm trying to fill each and every one of those pages with football information. In fact, if you go there now, you can click on the team-by-team schedules, and when you click on an opponent, the last 14 years' results appear at your fingertips. You can vote on the conference polls, non-conference polls, and once you vote, you see how the nation is voting on that game. How many people have picked Alabama to beat LSU in that crucial game? The percentages pop up, and once you vote, all you have to do is log on again, and you get the updated percentages. Also, if there's a question you want to ask me, go to philsteele.com, click on the Facebook logo, and when you do that, you go to my fan page. I answer all the questions each and every day. I'd be happy to answer your questions there. So check it out today, a wealth of football information, Phil Steele, STEELE.com.
Yeah, it's a fantastic site. And, Phil, I want to commend you. I love that you have Isaiah Crowell on one of your all-SEC teams. I believe it's his 4th team, but that guy is going to make some waves, I think, because really he's Georgia's only option in the backfield, and I look for him to do big things next year.
Yeah, I think he will. And for those that say a true freshman cannot do it, I'll throw out Marcus Lattimore from last year. Here's a guy that was one of the top rushers in the SEC as a true frosh, and South Carolina hadn't even had a 1,000-yard rusher since 2000. So, I like to make projections like that, Luke.
Well, that was a great call, Phil. And listen, thanks so much for being with us, and we'll have you on again very soon, okay?
All right, thank you, Luke. Great talking football with you once again, my friend.
Oh, absolutely love it. Thanks again, Phil.
Thanks.
That was Phil Steele of philsteele.com. The best in the business, bar none, in terms of these magazines where they prognosticate the future on the college football scene and on the NFL scene too. Phil is all about football all the time, and his magazine doesn't come out first, but it comes out definitely most accurately, and it comes out with the most information. When he's not kidding when he says he fills every square inch of those pages in his magazine, no doubt about it. That's going to do it for this segment. We'll be back in just a minute with more Sportz Blitz Live.